It's our stories. Welcome to a world where real stories sounds like a movie script.
I grew up in a house where the concept of favorite child wasn't just a whisper, it was a roaring, undeniable reality. My younger brother David was that child. The one who always had the spotlight, who could do no wrong, and who Mom adored with an almost blind devotion. And me, I was the shadow. Quiet, studious, introverted. The type who found comfort in books and long walks alone. I never sought attention. I never demanded praise. I simply existed in the margins, doing what was expected, absorbing what life threw at me, and hoping that one day being me would be enough. David, on the other hand, thrived on chaos. He was loud, reckless, and relentless, a perfect combination of charm and cruelty. Mom's indulgence fueled him, made him untouchable. She cooked his meals, folded his laundry with meticulous care, and insisted I assist him with homework he barely needed help with. I complied, of course. I always complied. Perhaps it was a mixture of guilt, duty, or hope that one day he'd treat me with a fraction of the kindness he demanded from others. But that hope never came. From the very beginning, David's resentment toward me was palpable, but not in the way you might expect. He wasn't jealous. He had everything he could ever want. Attention, freedom, love. His animosity seemed rooted in something deeper, something darker, a need to dominate, to prove superiority, to feed a sense of entitlement that he had been encouraged to cultivate since birth. As a child, he mocked me incessantly. My height, my glasses, the very things that made me me. He would sneak into my room, rifling through my diary, reading every secret thought, every vulnerability, and then running to Mom, framing my private thoughts as evidence of some personal flaw. When I confronted her, when I tried to defend myself, she would laugh. It's just how brothers are, she'd say, as if stones in my cereal, small cuts on my books, or ruined homework were normal bonding moments. And it escalated. Much more than teasing, David's cruelty turned physical and malicious. He once nearly broke my glasses on purpose, left disgusting surprises in my food, and even put small stones in my cereal. Luckily, I noticed them before any damage was done. Each time I complained, Mom would shrug it off, insisting it was part of sibling life. The subtle, persistent attacks on my dignity slowly eroded my confidence, creating an internal tension that I carried with me everywhere. School was no refuge either. I was bullied by other kids, and instead of defending me, David became the instigator. He would whisper insults to them, encourage them to torment me, and laugh when I tried to fight back. Names like Ugly Loser and Hairy Monkey followed me through hallways. One day, during a minor dispute I barely remember, he told me to kill myself. I was young, vulnerable, struggling with mental health, and those words carved deep into my soul. The betrayal of my own brother, someone who should have been my ally, was devastating. It wasn't all despair. Dad eventually intervened. I remember the day vividly. David, in one of his reckless stunts, attempted to set my hair on fire. Mom, of course, initially defended him, claiming it was just a joke, just boys being boys. But Dad saw the seriousness. He threatened to call the police to ensure David understood the gravity of his actions. The shock on David's face was unforgettable. For the first time, he faced consequences. And I finally felt validation. Someone recognized the torment I endured every single day. From that day, my life began to change. Dad enrolled me in MMA classes. At first, it seemed absurd, a nerdy kid like me learning to fight, but I threw myself into it with fierce determination. I trained, studied, and transformed my body and mindset. The day David stole my pocket money, I confronted him, and something snapped. I punched him. The look of shock, the tears, the fear in his eyes. It was a turning point. For the first time, I wasn't the powerless one. I had strength, not just physical, but emotional and psychological. Mom, predictably, intervened, but this time, her scolding felt hollow. Dad backed me. He told David that anyone else might have called the police, and he was lucky I didn't. David retreated, bitter and defeated, beginning a slow process of distancing himself from me. He couldn't physically intimidate me anymore, but verbal attacks continued, simmering under the surface. A persistent reminder that old wounds never fully heal. By the time I left for university, I was ready. I carried scars, yes, but also resilience. The shadow of David's cruelty lingered, but I had a sense of self I had never possessed as a child. And that sense of independence, of self-respect, would become the foundation for the life I was about to build. a life where I would finally reclaim my dignity, my family's respect, and ultimately my happiness. University was like stepping into a completely different universe. The first morning I woke up in my dorm, the sunlight streaming through the window, I felt a freedom I had never known. No teasing, no mocking, no shadow of David lurking behind every corner. Just me, and for once that felt like enough. The first weeks were overwhelming and exhilarating all at once. Classes, new people, endless corridors of possibilities. I joined study groups, made friends with people who shared my passion for knowledge, and for the first time, I felt valued for my intellect, my personality, my ideas, not just as the responsible older brother who never had a chance. It was intoxicating. And then there was Karen. I remember the moment vividly. A friend dragged me to a frat party, loud music shaking the floor, people swaying in drunken chaos. I wasn't particularly interested in social events, but that night, curiosity got the better of me. That's when I met her, Karen. She was standing across the room, laughing at something so effortlessly funny that I couldn't look away. Her presence was magnetic, a warmth that drew you in and made the world feel softer, safer, brighter. When we spoke for the first time, it was as if we had known each other for years. Conversation flowed naturally, laughter came easily, and for the first time in a long while I felt understood. I was captivated, completely. In the back of my mind, I realized that I had met someone extraordinary, someone I could imagine a future with, someone I could trust, or so I thought. We spent months getting to know each other, balancing classes, late-night study sessions, and small adventures around campus. Coming from a religious and conservative background, we were careful. Children before marriage were frowned upon, and we respected that. But as graduation approached, life threw us an unexpected curveball. Karen became pregnant. I remember the mix of emotions like it was yesterday. Panic, excitement, fear, and a strange sense of inevitability all at once. She and I sat on the campus bench, the autumn wind tugging at our coats, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes glistening with tears and hope, I realized one thing. We were in this together. We decided to marry immediately after graduation. The ceremony was modest but joyous. A small church, a few close friends, the quiet music, the smell of lilies. I held her hands in mine and felt, with every fiber of my being, that this was the life I had imagined. Finally, a family of my own, built on love, trust, and shared dreams. For a time, everything seemed perfect. Our parents were happy for us, Dad smiling with quiet pride, Mom even managing to beam with genuine joy, and even David, as always, remained distant. I didn't mind. His absence was almost comforting. I had finally carved out a space where my life was mine, separate from the toxicity of my childhood. But cracks began to appear, subtle at first, almost invisible. Small lies, little omissions, evasive glances. Karen and I had arguments that never lasted long, but each left a residue of doubt in my mind. And then, slowly, the unthinkable began to emerge. I discovered small traces, moments that didn't add up, messages left open, phone calls she seemed embarrassed to answer. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was being paranoid, I told myself. We had been through so much, and trust was fragile. I had no idea that David, my brother, had re-entered our lives in the most insidious way possible. Introduced to Karen at family gatherings, he was warm, polite, considerate, the exact opposite of the tormentor I had known growing up. Karen, wanting to be accepted, naturally gravitated toward him. She spent time with him, played video games together, chatted about life, and I, naive and trusting, saw nothing wrong. It wasn't until months later that the truth hit me like a bullet. Karen confessed, her voice barely audible, eyes avoiding mine, that she had been having an affair, long-term, intimate, and that there was a possibility that our son, the child I had loved and nurtured, was not mine at all. My mind froze, my chest tightened. I felt as if the floor beneath me had disappeared entirely. I asked her name, the one I could hardly believe, and when she whispered, "David," I felt my stomach drop, a twisting, burning sensation that left me speechless. My brother, the one who had haunted my childhood, who had stolen my peace and confidence, had now stolen my family, my trust, the very essence of my life. Karen tried to explain. She stammered, cried, pleaded. It was a mistake. I didn't know when to stop. I never meant to hurt you. Her words barely registered. I sat there, silent, numb, watching the woman I loved cry over a betrayal I could never forgive. I felt rage, heartbreak, disbelief, and an almost surreal detachment, as if I were watching a movie of someone else's life. I left her, packed my things. I couldn't stay in that house, in that life, in the shadow of their betrayal. Every glance at our son, every laugh, every small milestone would be poisoned by the knowledge of his true paternity. I needed space. I needed distance. I needed to reclaim my life from the wreckage they had left behind. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The apartment I had rented felt both suffocating and liberating. Suffocating because of the emptiness and the memories of what was lost. Liberating because, for the first time, I was free to think, to feel, to decide without anyone manipulating or deceiving me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands, imagining a million scenarios, none of them good. Every memory of David's childhood cruelty now bled into the present, painting him not just as my tormentor, but as a predator who had infiltrated the most sacred parts of my life. The next day, I went to my parents' house. My hands were trembling, my chest tight, but my voice was steady. I needed witnesses. I needed their acknowledgement, their support, someone to understand the magnitude of what had been done. Mom answered the door, surprised to see me so early. "What are you doing here?" she asked cautiously. I didn't answer. I walked past her, straight into the living room, and began recounting every detail. The years of torment, the small cruelties, the betrayals, and now the ultimate act, David sleeping with Karen, fathering the child I had raised as my own. Mom's face twisted, shock, disbelief, confusion. She tried to interject, to defend him, insisting her golden boy could never do such a thing. But I was relentless. I laid everything bare, every lie, every stolen moment, every secret affair. I watched her eyes widen as she realized, perhaps for the first time, the depth of David's duplicity. Then I called David, not in secret, right there in the living room, with my parents silently witnessing the unraveling of their perfect son. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, to see that there would be consequences beyond my own rage. The phone rang. David answered, his usual arrogance replaced by confusion when he heard my voice. I confronted him directly, step by step, detailing the affair, the lies, the countless ways he had violated trust. At first, he denied it outright, his tone defensive, smug even, as if denial could erase truth. But then I told him that Karen had confessed everything. His arrogance faltered. Blame seeped into his voice. "It's not my fault if women are attracted to me," he said, trying to justify the unjustifiable. "I'm better looking than you anyway." I laughed, bitterly, sharply. "Thank you for confirming the truth," I said, looking at my parents, who were silently witnessing the dismantling of their golden child. David sputtered, tried to explain, tried to shift blame onto Karen, onto circumstances, onto the universe itself. But it was futile. Mom's protective instinct fractured, replaced by disbelief and anger. Dad, usually measured and composed, grabbed the phone. His voice was calm, deliberate, heavy with authority. Yet each word struck David harder than any punishment I could have delivered. "David," he began, his tone unshakable, "what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother. It's a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife, continued the affair even after marriage, and shattered the trust we had in you. All the values I've tried to instill, loyalty, decency, respect for family, you have thrown away." David's words faltered. He stammered, sputtered, tried to regain control. But Dad continued, cutting off any excuses. "From today, you are cut off. College funds? Gone. Lifestyle support? Gone. You will figure out how to survive without what we've provided. Maybe now you'll learn that being attractive or charming doesn't make you better than anyone else." I stayed silent, letting Dad's words land. Watching David squirm, realizing that he had underestimated the consequences, gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Mom, though she tried to intervene, was silenced by Dad's firm stance. For the first time, the scales of justice in our family were balanced, not for me, but against David. After the confrontation, Mom approached me. She hugged me tightly, a gesture of apology and understanding that spoke volumes. For decades, I had endured, unrecognized, unloved, overlooked. In that hug, I felt seen. I felt validated. I felt the weight of my childhood slowly lift. With Dad's support, I engaged a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Karen's lawyer tried to manipulate, seeking alimony, claiming I earned more, but the truth of the affairs worked in my favor. The paternity test confirmed the devastating truth. David was Henry's biological father. The pain was crushing. The child I had loved and raised was not mine. But I stayed strong. I could not allow my life, my sanity, to be controlled by their betrayal. After the divorce, the world felt strangely quiet. The apartment I had moved into was modest, almost bare, but it was mine. No betrayals, no lies, no hidden agendas, just me. For the first time in years, I could breathe without tension clawing at my chest. I made the space my own, filling it slowly with furniture, books, and mementos of a life I could finally control. Therapy became my sanctuary. I dissected every memory, every betrayal, every hurt I had carried from childhood through my marriage. I allowed myself to cry, to scream in private, to confront feelings I had suppressed for decades. And through it all, I discovered resilience I didn't know I had. The quiet strength I had built during years of bullying and MMA training became the foundation for emotional survival. Dad's call about changing his will was almost surreal. For years, he had struggled with favoritism, indulgence, and the desire to protect David despite everything. But this time, he was resolute. David would receive nothing. Not the family home, not the life insurance, not the retirement funds. All nearly $2 million would pass to me. Mom's well-being was secured. She could live comfortably, but ownership of the property and the inheritance rested with me. I remember receiving the call from David before I knew of the will change. He sounded desperate, pleading. Struggling with college, finances, and the aftermath of Henry's paternity reveal, he begged me to help him. I laughed, bitterly, coldly. I reminded him of the consequences of his own actions. He had made his choices, slept with my wife, fathered a child, and destroyed trust. And now he wanted my forgiveness and assistance? Absolutely not. His pleas turned to anger, then tears. He cried in a way I hadn't seen since childhood, recounting how relatives, friends, even grandparents had turned against him. For a brief moment, a sliver of pity flickered in my heart. But it was fleeting. This was the same man who had tormented me for decades, who had violated every boundary, who had betrayed the family. I told him firmly that our relationship was over, and that he should never call me again. Life without David's shadow was liberating. I didn't contact Henry. I couldn't. Every glance, every laugh, every movement of the child reminded me of betrayal, of the brother I had lost, of the trust that had been stolen. I focused on myself, career, independence, and personal healing. My work flourished. I received a promotion. My salary increased. And I finally felt in control of my destiny. Relationships? Not yet. I needed space, time, and emotional clarity before allowing anyone new into my life. I had been through enough manipulation, deceit, and heartbreak to last several lifetimes. Instead, I nurtured my relationship with my parents. Dad and I developed a bond beyond father and son. We became friends, confidants, and allies. Mom, though she missed David, learned to respect boundaries, understanding that indulgence had consequences. David? The last I heard, he was struggling, dropping out of college, working a part-time mechanic job, living with Karen, and raising Henry. I allowed myself to accept that the child was safe, even if I could never be part of his life. My focus was on rebuilding, on reclaiming the joy and peace that had been stolen from me for decades. Through this journey, I learned the true value of resilience, self-respect, and the importance of boundaries. I understood that some relationships, no matter the blood, could be irreparably toxic. And I discovered that true vindication doesn't always come from revenge. It comes from reclaiming your life, your dignity, and the respect of those who truly matter. So now, I share my story with you, not for pity, not for validation, but to reflect, process, and perhaps help others navigate betrayal, toxic family dynamics, and the aftermath of infidelity. Here are a few questions I'd like you to think about. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did it affect you? Would you forgive a family member who committed a betrayal on this scale, or would you cut ties like I did? How do you rebuild your life after such deep emotional wounds? I'd love to hear your experiences and insights in the comments. And if my story resonated with you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are more real-life, shocking stories coming, each revealing the raw, unfiltered truths of human relationships. Thank you for listening, for being part of this journey, and for witnessing the story of survival resilience, and finally, liberation. Thank you for staying with me until the end. How would you have acted in the protagonist's place? Write your thoughts in the comments. More fresh and controversial stories every day on my profile. Like and subscribe to this channel